Okay, we are here and we are live. Oh my gosh, it's so awesome that this works out.
Yay!
Yay! I'm gonna actually hit the applause button because, it's not always a given. Okay, everybody. Wow, look at all of the people here. So, hey, Tracy S., Virginia, Teresa, let's see, and Seabliss. Wow, so many of you in here. So awesome to see you all. Hey. So, I am so excited to, be able to invite, hey, Arian, awesome. And, oops, I just want to make sure I've got everything right this time. So, we're getting a little more professional here. We're making things look good, and we are, just trying to be a regular old broadcast. Awesome. So welcome back. I hope you like the new appearance, and I am really excited to bring on today's guest. So today well, first of all, I want to say welcome back to the Black Carnivore channel. And here we talk about following a whole foods, meat-based lifestyle and everything that is necessary to support, a black carnivore, anybody eating a carnivore diet, a whole foods keto diet, all of those things. We're good here. But today I want to introduce Annika, who is the author of the Living Life Now YouTube channel. And I'm not sure if that's what we call ourselves. Are you an author of a channel or the creator of a channel? In any event, I put the link to the channel in the description box below, and you can definitely check it out. But she has a lot of good content on faith, on family, and just on living life. And she's been carnivore for several years with stunning success, and she's got her own health success, but also her son who has type 1 diabetes. So we're going to hear more about that story today. But I wanted, especially, by the end of this program, for you to really understand how, carnivore has impacted her health and also her son, and how he is doing without type 1, without insulin on, but having type 1 diabetes. And I do want to touch on how she feeds such a large family on carnivore, because, people are always asking, like, isn't that super expensive? And, how do you do this? So for someone who has a large family and does a lot of cooking, I would love to hear, some of her tips and tricks and stuff. So that was my rambling intro. And I want to get started. So, but before we get started, I ask you to, to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and click the little bell icon so you get notification every time I put up a new video. And let's give a warm welcome to Annika. All right, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Wow, we've got a lot of people here too, and just a bunch more people dropped in. So, hey, Abigail and Miss Teddy and Jimmy Zero Carbs. Oh, from Chicago, awesome. And you're from Chicago, aren't you, or in the Midwest somewhere? Yeah.
I am in the Chicagoland area. Yeah.
Yeah, I have several cousins there. Welcome back, Studsy Nation, and Tracy. Awesome. Yes, Tracy's asking, so how does this work? There's a moderator, just come online and start talking. I don't know. I think it works however we want it to work. Anyway, so I would love to hear from you, Annika, on, how did you learn about carnivore? Why did you decide to give a try? What was going on with your health that you thought that was something that was useful for you?
Okay, so I was actually keto prior to starting carnivore, and I was having some success on the keto diet, but I kept on hearing about carnivore, and I was like, that is out of control crazy, like no way. But it kept on coming up, and while I was having some success on the keto diet, I knew that there were still things weren't 100%. And, just I was being prayerful, like, okay, what direction do I go in? Is it something that I should pursue? And after much praying, I decided to kind of go ahead and jump in and just listening to different testimonials online. I was like, okay, you know what? Let's go ahead and give this a try. And I did. And one of the main reasons was for years, they've suspected that I had some form of lupus. And I also have alopecia. And, I've tried different things, every single concoction that you can think of, I've just tried different routes and just with no success. So I just figured, okay, we'll just give carnivore a try. So I started off, honestly, with just the intentions of doing it for like 30 days. And here I am over a year later, and I'm still, doing it. And of course, I couldn't see in the future and know that my son, we have 6 children, my husband and I, and our 10-year-old in April was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And it was obviously something that kind of rocked our world, but I felt equipped because of my own experience with carnivore and having an autoimmune, disease, and seeing how it's just made such a difference, because I used to get like different joint pains and just have different issues at different times and not knowing what would trigger it, And after going carnivore, I would have to say for the most part, it subsided. I do have moments where, I'll feel some inflammation, but for the most part, I'm doing pretty good.
So you do have lupus, or are you still skeptical about that diagnosis?
So I went and I took a test, and the test, confirmed. And the way they were saying it, it's like a generic autoimmune test that they gave. And they were like, yeah, you're pretty much there on the spectrum. So I went again recently, actually, and got some blood work done. And it was really interesting because now they're saying, things are back within the normal range from my blood work. So I was like, well, praise the Lord, So, yeah.
So I guess I'm not really familiar with what lupus is. So it's a general autoimmune disorder, and they just kind of slap that name on when nothing else seems to fit, or?
Yeah, so the doctor, you know how it can be when you go to the doctor, and how they just do these general things and they don't really follow through with great explanation. So they sent me to a rheumatologist who made some information. And, I'll be honest, I didn't really have much follow through because I was just kind of disgusted with the way they handled everything. And I just recently went back to just kind of get some blood work done after just being disappointed because I felt like they were just kind of bouncing me around. And I'm like, listen, this is just ridiculous,
Right.
So, yeah.
So like they gave you no explanation of like why you would start having an autoimmune disease, just like it's just something that's just started happening. And okay. And your symptoms were like joint pain and general pain.
General pain. And actually it was most recently with the blood test that I had done, it was through a dermatologist. And she was saying that she thinks that's what triggered my alopecia because of the lupus. Yeah, which, for a long time, I didn't realize that that was really what was going on. So, I plan to go back again and to someone else that can give me a little bit more detailed information. And, at this point, I don't really expect too much from certain doctors.
Right. Well, I wonder if, if you can get in to see Dr. Hampton. I mean, he is in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That even crossed my mind. But yeah, something definitely to look into.
I mean, I think he's a regular doctor. Like, you could just switch.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I will touch base with you after, and hopefully, you guys can make that connection. But it would be it'd be really nice to have somebody that like, who you can trust, at least kind of, talk you through this stuff. So, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so let's see. Everybody, I think my connection is not great. But can all of you give me, give me a thumbs up if you can, hear and see Annika well. So let me know and go ahead and hit the thumbs up button, or put a thumbs up in the chat. Okay. So I'm really loving the story. So how long has the lupus been going on? What's been happening?
So the dermatologist suspected, after just kind of looking at some of the initial blood work, that it had been going on for quite some time. However, she feels that it probably was just misdiagnosed along the way. Because I actually started losing my hair. I'm not 42, but I started losing my I was like, not, so I was still pretty young, but I was able to disguise it. And of course, with the progression of time, and I always assumed that it was because of my styling options, and putting different braids or weaves. So for a long time, I'm blaming myself, not realizing that it was some autoimmune issues going on, which I'm sure, the tight braids didn't necessarily help the situation either. So,
Right. Right. Wow. Well, I am so glad that you found your way to a Carnivore. So I know that for me it was like listening to Amber O'Hearn. Hearing her story was something that was really powerful for me because I was like she was very, very smart, and she was talking about a pretty serious disease. Like, I mean, most people are sort of talking about like allergies and this, but like once you start talking about really serious life-changing stuff and that kind of thing, reversing or going into remission, like that was pretty, for me that was pretty moving. What was it for you?
well, it's funny because I did listen to some of Amber's interviews,
Uh-huh.
and I just loved the way she presented things, and of course that was very moving for me. But what got me, and I can't remember the name of the YouTube channel, but it was just this mom. I think her name is Kara from like Healthful Pursuit or something. She's not as
Mm-hmm.
active now on her YouTube channel, but like me, she entered into the carnivore diet thinking, I'm just gonna give this a try and see if it really works. But she was extremely skeptical. I ended up watching a video after
Uh-huh.
she did her first, month, and just seeing the
Uh-huh.
changes. And the pull for me with her was that she was also a mother, and she was implementing a lot of the things that she was doing. I don't think her kids were fully carnivore, but she
Mm-hmm.
was doing a very low carb way. And, I think one of her child, I want to say the child was autistic. I can't remember
Uh-huh.
specifically what the issue was, but she was just saying that she saw some drastic changes in that child as well. So for me, I was like, all right, you got me. I'm in. So
Yeah.
that's what got me started. Yeah.
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 So while I enjoyed listening to all the doctors, I can't say that I always understood everything that they were saying.
Yeah.
But just hearing the different personal testimonies definitely um, sold it for me.
Yeah. Well, so I guess some people in the chat also have watched her, so it was Healthful Pursuit. Yeah. So
Yeah,
people did
yeah,
watch. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I think your connection is maybe breaking up a little bit, but people seem to, feel like they can hear you okay. So let's press on. Um, so now I would love, love, love to hear more about your son. So I first came across, well, I first understood the story listening to one of your videos about the ordeal that you went through. So can you tell us a little bit about lay out what happened and and where you guys are now?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So our fifth no, fourth child, Elijah, diagnosed with it in April. And he, like the week before his actual diagnosis, he just was losing weight just rapidly and just very lethargic. And, we were thinking, okay, this must be a bug. And we were like, okay, it's not COVID because he's not like showing the signs um, they say to watch for COVID. So I'm like, okay,
So
he just
you're
probably
you're
has a
actually
bug,
really
right? And we'll just let him rest. But like literally,
so
he was turning into skin and bone. Can you hear me?
so you're breaking up a lot. I wonder if you could start that again. Yeah, I don't understand what's going on here.
Yeah, I can
Um,
hear you fine.
yeah. So yeah, you're breaking up a lot. I couldn't hear you at all. Um, do you want to? Let's try again. Start the story again.
Okay. And at any point, stop me if I'm breaking up again. How
Okay.
is that?
Yeah, that's
All
pretty
right.
good. Uh huh.
So, like I was saying, our son Elijah, he was diagnosed in April with type 1. And a week before that, he was just like wasting away in front of us, like literally turning into skin and bones. And he was extremely lethargic. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and our assumption was that he probably just had a bug or something. So we didn't really think it was COVID because he didn't have any of the signs that pointed to it being COVID. And the turning point for us was Good Friday. We had a service for our church over Zoom, and we took communion, and he ended up throwing up after communion. And I'm thinking, okay, good. Whatever it was that you were dealing with, it broke.
Mm-hmm.
So we should be good. So we ended up going to bed that night. Saturday morning, he came into our room just like groaning. It was just such a scary thing. And it was like he was heaving. And we were like, what is going on? And we're definitely not those people that's like, okay, let's just run to the hospital for every single thing, right?
Right.
But we were like, this is pretty serious. And especially that was when everything was super heightened with the COVID thing. But we were
Right.
like,
Let's call him the C word.
yeah, the C word. Yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's
So
okay.
we ended up, my husband and I ended up rushing him to emergency room, and all the while we're praying because we're like, oh my goodness, like he just looked like he was just about to like pass out, and he had like severe diarrhea. So we ended up going to the emergency room in our area, and it was just a very devastating process because of everything that was going on in the world. Only one of us could go back. And, I ended up going back with him, and they were just busy trying to get things going. And the doctor that was there, thank goodness, like he had enough insight to kind of see that he suspected
Mm-hmm.
what it was. And, after being there probably for 30 minutes or an hour, after being there, he gave us a diagnosis because Elijah's glucose level was almost at 600. It was really bad. And when he said diabetes, my head just was spinning. I'm like, what are you talking about? Because I was just even so ignorant. I didn't know the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And I'm thinking, we eat pretty healthy over here, because even though I was the only one that was carnivore in our household, I did for the most part feed our family low carb meals. And of course, they would have their sugary treats every now and then, but it wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
daily thing. So I was just like really confused by that. And like I said, up until that point, I did not know the distinction between type 1 and type 2. Long story short, they ended up having another hospital. And, from there, they kind of started talking to us and telling us more about the diagnosis and it being type 1 and explaining that this was an autoimmune disease. And that within itself was a testing of my patience, because we encountered some very interesting advice in the process, that was just, like, it was disappointing, some of the things that were being suggested in terms of how we should move forward with our treatment of Elijah.
So wait, so before we dive into that, I just want to take for a moment to appreciate the fact that, like, in the beginning of what was like a really frightening time in our country, you had to go to the hospital with a child that had, some unknown problem. And I mean, so many people at the time, like, were terrified to go to the hospital. And I even had a client who had her doctor, she fell, broke her arm, and her doctor over Zoom showed her how to wrap up her arm.
Yeah.
And she waited another 6 weeks before actually getting any kind of treatment. So, that must have been, I just can't imagine how terrifying that must have been. And to think that this might be the last time you saw, your everything. God, I'm just, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That must have been really hard.
No, it definitely was frightening, but let me tell you, it was then that I was reminded of the power of praying. Like, I was just like, because, I mean, honestly, it was so much that was going on around me, and I'm like, God, this is beyond my control. And so much happens, so many things happen in life, right, where you realize control is an illusion. So here I am as a mom, just wanting to just dive in and protect my son and make everything better. And then we have all these medical professionals who should know what to do. And he's sitting here, because I'm thinking, we're at the hospital. Come on. Everything should be okay. And I was like, okay, so we clearly don't know what to do, but God, you do. So it was definitely scary, because I am human, obviously, but we were prayerful the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a trooper he was. I mean, that must have been so scary for him as a kid, and, not really understanding everything. So
yeah,
that was definitely an experience. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was.
Well, I'm glad that, you guys made it through and you are on the other side. You have definitely my prayers and support.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Thank
So
you.
now at the next hospital, were they giving you advice while he was still there, or as part of the discharge process? Were they telling you what to do, or?
Oh my goodness. Like, it was such an overwhelming process. Because before they discharge you, they have to give you this crash course on type 1 and how to take care of the type 1 and the insulin and how much to give for meals and how to figure out for carbs. Like, your head is just constantly spinning. Just a second. I have 6 children, and I told them I was going to be on. I'm in an interview right now. Welcome to my life.
Yeah.
Not now, go upstairs. Yes. So in any case,
it's okay. Do they want to say hi?
Okay. No, that's my 16-year-old, and she is not camera ready. I already know she probably would not get on here, but I apologize. This is my real life. But
well,
anyway.
So first of all, this is YouTube. It is not regular TV, and I think what people like here is our real life.
I got a lot of real life to share.
Okay.
For sure. But yeah, so the advice that they were giving, was, again, just such a contradiction to what I knew was working for me as someone with an autoimmune disease. So, carnivore, I don't have long flowing here now, but I can say that I don't necessarily have joint pains every second and just the inflammation that I had. So, when they're telling me, oh, let him eat whatever he wants to eat and just cover it with insulin. If he wants to have birthday cake, and I get it, I feel like part of what they were trying to do was saying he can continue life as normal. But it was just so upsetting to me because I'm thinking, you're telling every parent this when they've just dealt with their child being on the brink of death. And you're telling them, keep, hey, you can feed them other things that could certainly lead to death.
Yeah.
And I remember at just one point, because after talking to them, they figured out that I was low, and I didn't dare tell them that I was no carb at all, because I know in terms of being carnivore. But they
so
were
this
just
was all
kind of
happening on the same day, or was it happening over time? Like, how were they trying to also suss out your diet, or?
So if for 4 days he was there. So before you're discharged, they have to do like all of this education with you. And it was just, even if they were given the right information, that's still so overwhelming. It really is. So this was the first day, the first full day that he was in the hospital. I'm on the phone with the dietitian, and she's asking like, what are some meals that we normally prepare at home? And as I'm sharing with her, she's kind of scrutinizing what I'm feeding my family and saying, okay, well, that's not necessarily the best thing for him because whatever. She gave some fancy explanations that I'm like, Lord, help me. And, she was just pretty much saying as a young child, he needs carbs and just whatever. And we're going back and forth because we had to plan the menu for what he was going to eat, because they were going to use that to teach me how to administer the insulin and how to calculate how much insulin. So she's given me suggestions in terms of what to feed my child. And of course, the hospital food, which that's a whole nother story.
It's a whole nother story.
Like, yeah. You have 6 people here. Explain to me why you have this on the menu. Like, it was just really, really ridiculous. So, everything that she was suggesting, I would have a rebuttal. Like, this is not good. And this has this in it. And, so we were going back and forth. And, at one point she said, oh, if you want to take him to McDonald's, that's totally fine. And at that point, I was being nice. I was irritated, but I was kind of trying to hold my peace at different points. But at that point, I said, listen, what you're suggesting is not good for anyone, whether or not you have diabetes, And I think what was really disheartening to me was that as I continued to talk and she realized that I knew a little bit of something, she started confessing that she doesn't necessarily eat that way either. And I'm thinking, so why, would you, because they train you to say this? Like, that's a bit problematic. So needless to say, I was not very happy, and I don't want to bash anyone's character, because she was sweet and all of that, but she was sweet and very wrong in terms of the things that she was presenting, and I didn't necessarily appreciate the way she was making me feel like I was a bad mom for advocating, that my child eat in a certain way. And at that point, my dear husband had to help me to say, calm it down. take it down a few notches, Anika. And I was like, okay, all right. I know what I'm going to have to do when we get home. And I realized, it wasn't for me to go back and forth.
Wow. Sorry, hold on. So what a story. I am so sorry that, that happened, but not luck, but how amazing that you had already gone through your struggle with autoimmune disease. So you at least had that information going into this whole experience. So that's interesting that you had, that knowledge from that perspective. And so you were able to push back even then. And, you pushed back in the hospital. I don't know if I might not have just been like, okay, and then gone home and done something different. So I'm impressed.
Yeah, well, I think for me, I just really recognize whether or not it's with diet, you see that pain is always redemptive, right? Mm-hmm. Because I know from my own struggles and going through what I went through, I saw the redemption in being able to say, hey, kind of traveled this path and I know some things that definitely can work. So I see redemption even in that. And, you know, with the doctors, I think for me, I can be a pretty passionate person. And because I had some discussions with the doctor as well. And for me, even if they felt like, okay, you're just some random person and you don't really know what you're talking about, my prayer is that something that I said would at least stir them to like research a little bit. Like, you know, you just never know the weight of your words. And I wasn't being nasty. I was being firm and just letting them know, like, hey, and like I said, I was very naive to the difference between type 1 and type 2. So just learning all of that and still learning, quite honestly, about it. But as I was there, every time they would say something to me, I would get out the little phone and get on Google. And, you know, in the process of being in the hospital, I was not playing. Because the doctor would come in, I'd be like, I read on. And they were like, oh, my goodness. You know?
Like, oh, yeah, Dr. Google, thanks.
Dr. Google, and I had no shame. I had no shame. Because I came across, actually, while I was in the hospital, Dr. Bernstein. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that just gave me even more like, okay, we know somebody who's a doctor. You may be able to ignore me, but we know somebody, you know, I found out about somebody who's a doctor who himself has type 1 diabetes, and he's 86 now, and he's been able to just make such great strides in all of this. But, you know, it was definitely a process. So when we first came home, Elijah still was taking insulin. And what was really interesting to me is that even though we were in the hospital with all of the kids, they were never able to get his numbers to a stable level. It was still like, it came down, but it was still like 200, 300. And, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, oh, okay, this doesn't make any at all. And I will admit, the first few days after he came home, we were still struggling because there was some stuff here that he didn't need to eat. And just for the morale of it all, we were like, okay, whatever, just go ahead. But when we done, we going straight like boot camp, right? Yeah. And we did. We did. And I have to say that we saw a significant reduction in the amount of insulin he had to take from when he was in the hospital versus being at home and eating more of a low carb diet. And, you know, of course, I was just researching left and right. And when I say research, I mean on YouTube and on Google, right? Trying to find information. And I came across, and I'm like, God, you are so good. I came across Jill, I can't remember her last name, but she's also a carnivore. And she interviewed this doctor, Dr. Hussey, who he himself is a type 1.
Jill
and
Samter.
He had been carnivore. Yes. So
yeah, everybody go check her out. She has an interesting channel too, and she interviewed me on her channel as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I really, you know, just listened in to his interview, and I, you know, was like, okay, the endo that we're working with, she's not trying to hear anything that we're trying to say, and, you know, I just was feeling very anxious because when we first came home, we had to report out like how many carbs he was receiving per day. And it was just such a like unnerving process for me because I knew that they didn't agree with our approach. But at this point, I'm like, this is our child. This is not an experiment, you know? So we're going to do this. And so I knew that I couldn't necessarily have dialogue with her concerning the low carb lifestyle. And I reached out to Jill, and she, you know, suggested that I reach out to Dr. Hussey, and I did. And we ended up having a consultation with him, my husband and myself, and for a good hour. And he just like gave us so much good information. And it's funny because great information in terms of how to approach it, because his thought was like, he's been a diabetic for over 20 something years, and he's been a carnivore for about a year now, and he has been able to like manage it and significantly reduced the amount of insulin that he had been taking. But he said, you know what? I believe that if I had caught it in the very beginning and gone low carb or whatever carnivore, that I could have possibly stopped it in the track. And that was the first time that someone presented that possibility, because the doctor was like, oh, doomsday, you get type 1, this is it, because I'm asking questions. And, you know, for me, I do believe in miracles. I absolutely believe in miracles, right? And I do feel like I said, you mentioned to you earlier when we had a discussion, that God is a healer, but I also believe to know how to partner with him in all of this. So when Dr. Hussey said that, I was like, okay, this is making sense. And he referenced a study that I'd actually read about in Hungary of, you know, someone that was diagnosed with type 1, and right away they put him on the child on the carnivore diet, and they were able to turn things around. Well, of course, the doctor doesn't say any of that to you, you know. Yeah. So in talking to Dr. Hussey, he just really just let us know that, hey, I can't promise. And I'm like, that's okay. You're not Jesus. I'm not expecting you to promise anything. But he's like, this is something that you can try, and there is a possibility that you could turn this around. And, you know, for us, even though we were doing low carb with Elijah, we were giving him a lot of dairy. And again, it was just more like, okay, this is what makes everything taste yummy. And, you know, Dr. Hussey was like, yeah, cut it out. Like, dairy is one of the main things, especially because he's like, yeah, you can help to normalize his levels, but because it's an autoimmune disease, you want to heal the gut, right?
So wait, I totally want to dive in on this. But I gotta say, people fight me all the time on dairy. And yes, it's delicious, but there are so many reasons why it can present a problem for a lot of people, especially people who are trying to heal things. So there are people who are listening, or who are in the chat now, or who are listening, who maybe need to hear this message one more time. Dairy might be delightful, but it really can present a challenge for you. So I encourage you to truly take it out for 2 weeks and really test and see how you feel, because you might discover a lot of things change for you. I know for me, my asthma went away, and that's a big thing. It's not a little thing. Being able to breathe is really, really important. So I do encourage you there. Now, we also have a lot of people watching, and I really encourage you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the little bell notification. And this is really cool, but I'm at 996 subscribers. I only need 4 more to get to 1,000. So I really ask you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button, or tell somebody you know to come hit that subscribe button. It would be so, so awesome to hit that 1,000 mark while we're here on this live stream, okay? And I see, I see the Broken Prophet said, okay, I'm going to steal that. God is a healer, but I also know how to partner with him. Amen. And then he also writes, don't do me, A-Day. Laughing out loud, I've been good on dairy. My inhaler isn't in as much use, I have to say. So he knew who I was speaking to. When
you were coming for people, huh?
Yes, because, you know, I think so many of us are so talented and so amazing and have so much to offer the world, and and we're held back by these things that there are simple answers to, or simple solutions. And, I don't want to see any more of us, struggling with any disease or the byproducts of just poor care for things that there are other solutions. Like, you should have been told that, this is another option. Like, they don't have to do it at the hospital, just tell you. And I will also say that there's another friend of mine on Instagram who is a registered dietitian, and she recently just quit her job and became a butcher. She said she just couldn't bear to not share this information with people who really needed it. And, I guess I can imagine the medical professionals, like they have to follow their rules, and their licenses or whatnot are at stake. But so people have all of their own reasons for doing these things, but it matters. So I'm glad you all didn't
It
listen.
does. It totally does. And with to the dairy piece, especially if you have autoimmune issues, that can definitely, mess you up even more. So we immediately took that
Well,
out.
what did
So,
Dr. Hussey say? Sorry, I interrupted you just as you were getting to the good stuff. What did he say about why you need to not eat it?
okay, so he was just saying, like, of course, with the autoimmune disease, it's like your body attacking itself, right? And the way he explained it was just in essence that there's something in dairy that mimics something in your body, and it's just a whole bunch of confusion, and it just kind of attacks it. So the dairy being there, and I'm totally butchering the explanation. I actually have an interview with him on my channel where he goes into more details about it. But he's just like, if you're going to remove
Actually,
anything at all,
Actually, if somebody in the chat, I'm not sure who here is a moderator, but if somebody could go to her channel and pull up the interview with Dr. Hussey and just paste it in the chat, that would be awesome. Maybe Mia, I don't know if you can do that, but yeah, if you could do that. So go ahead. You had an interview with him, and
yeah. So he was just like, um, try to just do carnivore. And my dear husband, who is not a carnivore, he eats what I cook, but up until that point, he wasn't interested in doing carnivore. But of course, knowing that this is something that could change the course of his son's life, he was like, okay, he was convinced. So we decided, family, that, and Dr. Hussey was like, you can still eat, some vegetables or whatever, but he was like, the best would just to do fully carnivore. And of course, at the bare minimum, eliminating sugars and all of that, and definitely dairy and nuts, etc. Right? So we were like, okay, we're going to do this. But it's interesting because the day that we got on the interview with Dr. Hussey, Elijah did not take any insulin at all because for like 2 days in a row, it was so scary. We would give him insulin before going to bed, the long acting insulin, and because he had a continuous glucose monitor, and he was dropping really low. And we're like, this doesn't make sense because he's already getting so little insulin. We, just didn't understand that. My husband was like, let's just try to see what happens if we don't give him insulin. And his levels were in the normal range. So for those 2 nights, it was like we were just giving him sugar pills to bring things back up because the monitor just kept on going off. And every time we think that the situation was fixed, at least 3 times, it would go off, within an hour or two. So we were like, okay, we're going to try this. So when we had the interview with Dr. Hussey, he had gone a full day without any insulin. And we have not looked back since. He has remained, it's been almost 3.5 months, and he has not had any insulin at all. And we did make the transition. Initially, everyone in the house was doing carnivore. We just went cold turkey.
so
However,
there's like
with
8 of
time,
you who all of a sudden became carnivore. 8 of you. So there's like 8 of you in your family, and you all
carnivore,
became carnivore.
and I can't say everybody was happy about it because we had, yeah, everyone was not happy about it. But now we've kind of, so now there are some that will eat vegetables, right? Because they were like, this is just too difficult. But we still do no dairy. So there are some that will do some vegetables, and, I'll cook that. But most of the meals are strictly carnivore, but the option is there if they want vegetables. Elijah, for the most part, is upwards 90 something percent carnivore. He's not really like, I just really love vegetables like that anyway. So he pretty much is, sticking to it. And occasionally he'll have some vegetables as well. And, on birthdays, we have a lot of summer birthdays in our household. So, on those days, we bake like a keto treat and we'll allow him to have like one, but it's not like a every day after a meal, here's a treat for you.
Right.
And we've not had any insulin. And I want to be so careful here with what I say, because the only reason why we've not given him any insulin is because he's remaining in normal range. If he was not carnivore or not, we would give him the insulin. So, I want people to be mindful and just know that, okay, don't think, okay, I'm just going to go carnivore and just throw my insulin out, because your body needs the insulin. So, of course, operate with wisdom. And if at any point in time, I'm praying that it doesn't happen, that there's a relapse, then, hey, we'll give you the insulin that's needed. But in the meantime, we're going, and most doctors, they would say that this is a honeymoon, phase that he's going through. But we're just praying that it just goes on forever.
Yeah. So that's so amazing, and I think so interesting. Like, I had no idea that, the way it's presented is that, type 1 diabetes is irreversible, and that's just kind of it. So when I saw your story, and then I remember reading somewhere that if type 1 diabetes is caught early, that it is potentially possible to help the beta cells in the pancreas rebuild so that they can continue to produce insulin on their own. But that there's a honeymoon phase in which that can happen, and then if you miss that, you maybe miss the opportunity. So you may be one of like a handful of people who've like actually caught that time period, and it's really curious to see what may happen. I mean, 10 years of eating this way, who knows, maybe you rebuild enough of those cells that I don't know.
Yeah. So what they say is, after you're diagnosed with type 1, that there are some beta cells that are still alive, right? And that what you do in this window could potentially help, the process. And, my thought is, of course, we're praying that this will continue, but we've had discussions with Elijah and just say, hey, if at any point in time you have to go back to take an insulin, you don't have to be discouraged, because at least you know now what to do to keep it down, because that's something else that they didn't share with us in the hospital, the long-term effects of, type 1 diabetes, and eating a lot of high carb foods and having super high levels. Like, they had none of those discussions with us, which to me is kind of irresponsible. Like, why wouldn't you share that with a parent, So,
Well,
yeah.
maybe a lot of information, and, just really depressing since they have nothing better to offer. Yeah. So I would love to invite people in the chat to put some questions up and ask questions if you have them. But I think that, I think this is just such a fascinating story. Now, I had one more question. So, did Dr. Hussey, or did in your research, did you come across anyone who had stepped in at the right time and changed their diet and continue on for any length of time? Like, because I saw a study that I posted a link of it in the description about the effects of a fasting mimicking diet on it potentially helping people with type 1 diabetes rebuild or regrow beta cells in the pancreas. And, it was a study in mice and everything, and it was a fasting mimicking diet. So it was like low carb, low protein, low everything, low calorie and high fat. But technically a carnivore diet is, we're all more or less in a fasted state went on a carnivore diet. So I would think that, there might be some comparisons that you can draw between that study. But I'm curious, like, in 10 years, what Elijah might look like. I mean, would he still be in the state, or might he have regrown enough that, he really is out of the woods entirely? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't. I'm praying that that is the case. But in terms of the study, the only one that I am familiar with is this one out of Hungary. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know now what the situation is in terms of the child that, they said that they were able to go without giving him insulin. I don't know, but I would be curious to see where he
Yeah.
is now, how that
Yeah.
all worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Queen Micah, nice to see you. And Black Passport Fit just posted another YouTube video. I'm not sure what that one is too, but maybe it's the study about that study. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So how does Elijah feel about eating this stuff? I mean, is he more or less like on board, or is he trying to push the push the envelope?
Listen, so it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. I'm not even going to pretend, but we've our parenting style is we're not necessarily we don't hide things in our parenting. We're very forthright, and you know we've just had, actually I did a video about this on my YouTube channel, in terms of, like, you can't sit and sulk. So like when everything happened, of course it was devastating for him, and he was pretty depressed about it, and just
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, hey, this is just, certain things are just off limits to me now. And I think we had to go through the process of sitting and grieving with him and saying, hey, we know that this is horrible. We know that this isn't the best. However, we can't sit in this place, right? Of just, oh, this is just horrible. Like, thank God you're alive. Like, just giving him that perspective, and just trying to maintain that delicate balance of giving him an opportunity to share how he's feeling, and to say, yeah, I agree with you. This is horrible. However, they caught it. We
Yeah.
know what's going on, and we know what we can do to help to remedy the situation in some way. So that's something that we have to constantly go back to and have conversations with him. And we sat and watched, actually, even as a family, just different YouTube videos of things that happen with people that have type 1 diabetes, and they don't necessarily approach it in the right way, and from a dietary standpoint. So we don't try to shelter him from, this is what could happen. So here, this this is not, I know, the best thing for you as a 10-year-old. However, it is the best thing for you in terms of the route that we're going right now. So some days he's wonderful, and other days you could just tell that it's like, man, this is just horrible. But I think that he's a pretty intelligent child, and I think there's something for him where he experienced a month of taking insulin. He experienced, you know, the fear that was there when his levels went really low, or if he would go outside and just things being wacky and all over the place. So he knows the other side. So
Mm-hmm.
even though he doesn't necessarily care for this, he prefers the outcome, even
Yeah.
though he doesn't necessarily like the process. Which, listen, I'm like, brother, that's the story of life. We all like the outcome, but the process is not
Yeah.
always wonderful. So it's a lot. It's a lot that's going on, but I think it's made a difference that we have galvanized together as a family to say, hey, we're not bringing things in the house that could throw you off. Now, with all that said, I have a 16-year-old, because I told them, you could eat what we cook, because everybody was, we were having a little coup in here, like, why is it? And like, just the, whatever. And we were like, I would have loved for them to be like, okay, we're gonna do whatever we can do to help our brother. And while they wanted to see him well, it was hard for them as well. And we were just like, you're not buying groceries, so here you go, So they'll live better. But then I have the plot thickens because I have a 16-year-old who got a job and she gets paid. And, sometimes she chooses to go through certain drive-throughs and eat certain things that I would prefer that she not, and that's a part of the process of her growing up. But we just say, try not to bring it home because that just compounds, the issue. So we're all learning. We're all learning while we have an expensive grocery.
So Audra asked, does Elijah wear a continuous glucose monitor? So I think you said he did. Uh-oh.
Okay, so he did initially, and right now we have to actually go back because those things, I'm telling you, this entire type 1 diabetes thing, it's a money making. They make some serious money off of you. They really do, because even with insurance, the cost of insulin was absolutely ridiculous. And after reading Dr. Bernstein's book, I realized, I don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for this insulin that you're prescribing to me, especially if we're trying to go a low carb way. So we ended up going to Walmart and getting the insulin that was like $20-something. And the bottle is actually still sitting in our refrigerator because we never had to open it. But it was so much money. So I say all that to say, I'm taking the scenic route to just say that, yes, he did have a continuous glucose monitor, and now we just have to go and get a new transmitter. So now we're just doing, the pricks throughout the day.
So how long is he going to wear the continuous glucose monitor? Or you're saying now he's gone back to just using the regular prick?
The prick. So when we saw that it was consistently low, we were just kind of spreading it out because again, it's so expensive. So we just kind of spread it out, and we already had the things here, the test strips and everything. So we just do that before, when he wakes up and before the meals, we just test him. And we kind of go back and forth to do the glucose monitor for now.
Yeah. Yeah. And how expensive is insulin? I actually don't really know.
Too expensive. With insurance, we were paying $200 for just the regular one. And then there was the long acting insulin, and I can't remember how much that was, but it was ridiculous. Like, it's just crazy how much it was. And the thing is, you don't even use all of it within the time frame because it expires. So you have to, it's some money. They make some serious money. So like I said, once I read Dr. Bernstein's book, I, went ahead and I did talk to his doctor and let her know that we were going to make the switch and just do the regular insulin and buy it from Walmart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. This is such a story, but it really is so encouraging to hear. And I hope that this interview and your videos get out there as far as possible so that anybody who is in this situation, at least has that opportunity. Because as I understand, there's like a 6-month window where you have an opportunity to try and do this before, perhaps it's too late. So it's, my camera. So, it's really amazing that you had this opportunity to try it.
Definitely.
So now I would love to hear more about how you feed 8 people on a carnivore diet. And do you buy like a whole cow every week? Do you have like a deep freezer? Like, how do you manage that?
So we do have 2 refrigerators because that's absolutely necessary. And, while I would love to always do all grass fed and all that, we don't. We kind of switch it up. So some months, I'll order from like Butcher Box or another local farm, and I will get larger portions of the cow because it just works out to be cheaper that way. But for the in between, I have no problem going to the regular, grocery store, say a good prayer, let the Lord remove all these and all the other stuff that they put in there that shouldn't be in there. But I do Costco a lot as well, and that works out for us. But it is expensive. There's no other way to put it. It does get pricey because they eat a lot.
Yeah. So Broken Prophet is saying, "Oh my God, how many? 8 people. 8 people altogether." So you do need to buy a whole cow and raise some pigs and chickens. So wow, but Butcher Box is pretty expensive. That's that's quite an investment.
It is. So like I said, it's not like a every week type of thing, and it comes. So we kind of stagger everything. We kind of have a little system going.
Uh-oh, you're breaking up again. Can you hear me? You're breaking up again.
Make it work. However, for us, just seeing, we feel like, how about now?
Can you say, yeah, I can hear you now, but can you repeat that to start over?
Okay, so at any point, stop me if I'm breaking up. So, okay. Yes, it can be expensive, but for us, I think we just try to cut back in other areas because we feel like it is worth it. You know what I mean? So we may not go shopping in other areas as much, and just kind of focus on the groceries. But yeah, I don't know. There's just no way around it. It does get expensive.
Well, and that's why I wonder: is it more cost effective to order like a half cow? I mean, people do that kind of thing, and
so we have done that. So we have done that. We have done that. There is a farm that's close to us, and we stagger it again. In terms of ordering from them, where I'll get larger portions of the cow, and that does, like I said, work out to be cheaper, but it's when we're able to, because even though it works out to be cheaper, you have to put a lot on the front end. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So we do.
Although Audra and Seabliss both point out that food is still cheaper than drugs, and all the insulin and the other stuff is not inexpensive. Let's see. Seabliss says, according to Single Care Insurance, it can be as high as $250 a vial.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very expensive. I mean, and again, it's just disheartening to know that they don't share with you that there is another option,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So for a while then, everybody was eating carnivore or low carb as a way to support and to be encouraging. Does everybody like meat, or and how do you cook? Like, I guess, like, I cook everything in the air fryer, but there is a limit to how many servings that can fit in an air fryer at once. How do you actually like cook this stuff?
So I don't do all the cooking, number one. Because I'm like, yeah. So we, train everyone to be on board in terms of, the children helping out with the cooking. So that helps. And we have an air fryer, and I'm just waiting for them to come out with one that actually would work for our family. Because sometimes I'm like, by the time if I'm cooking something for everyone in the air fryer, I'm standing there for a while because you have, and we have the largest one. So at that point, I'm like, I might as well just pop this in the oven because, it may not be as crispy, but whatever, you'll be all right. So we do use the air fryer, and the oven is just definitely our go-to. I also have an Instant Pot, which I absolutely love the Instant Pot. I do. Yeah. I do, especially when it comes to making like broth and, just my slow cooked meats. I love that.
Yeah. So do
Yeah.
you all sit down together and eat together as a family, or is everybody sort of staggered and eat whenever?
So it depends on the meal. Um, we do try at least one meal where we come together, and it's not like what you would see in the movies. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
we're together. I'll say that much, but it can get a little loud, and some maybe at the island or some maybe at the table, but we're all
Okay.
together. It doesn't happen for every single meal, but we do try. We try to be intentional about that because it's just a sweet way to come together as a family, as loud as it can get, and sometimes it's unnerving and not so sweet, but we try. We try.
Well, I guess I'm a little jealous. I grew up, it was just me and my mom. So, I would see these big family dinners on TV, and it was like, oh, that would be so awesome. So yeah, I'm a little jealous there, but so as loud as
Yeah.
it might be, it sounds like it's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, we have some. I have my my fifth boy. He's a carnivore. He doesn't understand the concept of utensils at all, and it's one of those things. When we're all home, it's like whatever. But whenever we have guests, it highlights what I really need to work on, and I'm like, ooh, we do have forks here. I promise we have forks. He just never eats it. Like he just goes in with his hands, and it's a good time. It's a good time. It's a good time for the most part. For the most part, yeah.
Oh man, but that sounds like there's a lot of love in your household, and that is really, really important. So, and
Yeah.
for you to foster something like that, where everybody really does come together and supports one another is a beautiful thing. So, thank you for bringing that to the world because you're creating
Oh,
all of these humans that are going to be good people walking the earth, and that's not
yeah.
easy.
Yeah. Well, that's our prayer. We hope that is the case. A lot, and I'll say this, a lot happens at the dinner table. I feel like in this world where everything is just so rushed, and I am that mom that's like, so how was your day? How did it go? And if I do that at the wrong time, shut down, no communication. But there's something about when conversations are just flowing freely at the table and they're a little bit more comfortable and don't feel like they're necessarily being interviewed by me because I am an interviewer. Like, I'll admit it, right? But there's something about when we're just sitting and
Yeah.
you're not really thinking about it, and I don't even think they realize it. They let their guards down. So, like I said, I'm not going to pretend. It doesn't happen for every single meal, but we do try to fight to make it happen, because they end up sharing things that you're just like, oh, this happened, and you try not to look shocked with some of the things that come out. So that's something
Yeah.
that I would definitely encourage people if you can, and don't worry about it looking pretty because it never looks pretty over here. And it's not about necessarily the presentation; it's about just being present, and
Yeah.
spending that time together.
Yeah. Wow. So this is really just such an amazing story. And again, I invite all of you in the chat. If you have questions, please put them up, put them in the chat. I think there's probably so much more experience here from Anika that I haven't hit. So I haven't asked all of the questions, but it's I'm just really, I don't know that I could have gotten through the challenges as gracefully that you have, because that was a really scary time back in April, and to navigate through this and to push back against everyone, and do something different than what you had been told to do. Like that's that's really big. That's really big.
Yeah. Well, I think what honestly makes a difference is number one, just even having the support of my husband, even though it's not something that's necessarily easy for him. Because I'll, often hear people say, oh, I could just never do this with my family. And I think that it's important to be on one accord. And that was not always the case as it pertains to like food. And I think because, this happened, this just kind of brought us together even more. So I don't know that and let me not paint the picture that it's always like just so easy and I'm just always floating. I do have my moments, just quite transparently, where it becomes overwhelming, right? Because it's a lot to maintain, but just trying to keep that proper perspective. But I would say that it's helped to have the support of my husband, even if he isn't necessarily doing the cooking, but to know, hey, I can trust you to go to the grocery store and you're not going to bring home cupcakes because, sometimes as a dad, he would bring home the little treats or whatever. So it just makes a difference now to know that we are just on one accord.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, we still have a lot of people here, and I want to say thank you so much for watching. Can you hit the like button, subscribe, and click the little bell icon so that you can get notification every time I go live? And we are so close, 997 subscribers. I can't believe I'm so close to 1,000. So I encourage you to hit that subscribe button if you've liked what you've seen today, and and go on and share this information with as broadly as possible with anyone who might need to see it. And and I think it's interesting that even if you haven't caught your child in this time period and are able to actually get off the insulin altogether, I have seen since I started doing a little bit of research, I've seen a lot of people who are type 1 diabetics on Carnivore and doing quite well. So, I don't know if you want to follow them or check out their social media channels, but there's definitely a contingent out there. Anika, did I lose you? Are you frozen?
Oh, no, man. I'm still here.
Oh,
can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Let's see. I see Audra says, I'm a pharmacist and I've learned more in this session than what I've learned in pharmacy school. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I see the Broken Prophet says, I love the sister story. Food is the ultimate drug, the ultimate steroid if you lift weights. Unfortunately, sometimes we take it the wrong way and abuse it. Yeah. So, yeah. You are turning around and you are using food so effectively, and I'm really impressed. And you've given me even more inspiration to be more careful and really on my game, and to really push this message forward, because it really does matter. And I think it's interesting too that it's not the carbs are an issue and they're certainly important, but there's also this autoimmune piece that doesn't get addressed in a low carb environment. So so a lot of times, when people are like, well, why can't I have a little of this? It has almost no carbs, or it's got no carbs. And it's like, there's this other piece that's going on. Artificial sweeteners can have, really wreck your gut. And that's a big part of what's happening too.
Absolutely.
What did they say about artificial sweeteners, or Dr. Hussey? Do you use that, or?
So that's not something that I, like I said, on birthdays, they've had keto approved treats. Like, my 5th child just celebrated his birthday. He does, but it's not something that we do daily. Like, in terms of what they eat, we do 3 meals a day for them. And that's another thing that I have to say. This has significantly reduced the need for them to snack. I do have, though, my little Faith, my youngest, like, we all know her tagline is, I'm hungry. Like, when she doesn't know what else to say, it's, I'm hungry, even if she's not, right? But they do pretty well. And I try to feed them a lot of beef, and trying to be mindful of how much fat they're consuming as well, to help to keep them more satiated. So that has helped. So in terms of the sweeteners, it's not something that it's okay after every meal, here's a low carb cookie. We
Right.
do try to stay away from that
Yeah.
because, like you said, it can wreck your gut.
Yeah. Do you find it stokes appetite in the other kids?
Repeat your question.
Do you find that it stokes the appetite like in the other kids? Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I will say this: that whenever we like celebration of the, you could
Wait,
just
sorry.
tell. And
You to say that again, start again.
okay,
You
so
broke up.
whenever we've done the celebrations of the birthday, like this has been so eye-opening for me. Whenever we've done the celebrations of the birthday, you could tell the next day that certain things have been triggered. And it's like, okay, let's calm it back down. Let's bring it back in, you know? So it's, I don't care if it's low carb or whatever, like it does
Yeah.
trigger a
Yeah.
response. It certainly triggers a response.
Yeah, for me as well. That was really what, finally helped me to see like I can't, even some sugarless gum is a problem and I just can't do it. And to constantly have to be battling these cravings is just hard. Like there's no reason to do it. Like it's just easier to go all the way. Yeah.
It is. And I will say that like we sometimes buy like berries for them, but even with that, just trying to be mindful of
Right.
not making it a daily thing where they're having it, you know, because
Yeah.
that too within itself,
Yeah.
you know, can
Yeah.
trigger things.
Absolutely. Well, so some people are asking what your social media is, where they can find you. So what do you tell people?
I tell people I'm too nosy and get too distracted, so I don't have social media except for YouTube. I tried it, didn't work for me. So, and, you know, I may revisit that idea, but I didn't have enough self discipline. So for now, you can find me here on YouTube at Living Life Now, and I actually have Living Life Now is pretty much it on YouTube. Yeah, and I have another YouTube channel, but that's not health related.
Yeah. So I have found lots of great like in videos on her page about like just different things to cook and sort of different ways to do carnivore in the family. So I would definitely head over there, subscribe, check out her videos. There's a lot of really good information, a lot of good, just helpful information. And then keep an eye out. I'm sure she will let everybody know once she gets on Instagram. And let everybody know so we can all go and follow her there. And Audra asked, do others in your family suffer from some type of autoimmunity?
So, no, but Dr. Hussey did say something that was really interesting, which we shared with our children. So he said that, you know what, the kids, our other children, really doing this is of great benefit to them because they have found that sometimes if one sibling has it, that it can trigger, later on for some. So, like in his case, his brother didn't get diagnosed until he was 20 something years old, where Dr. Hussey got diagnosed when he was 8 years old. So he was like, it's just something to consider. But one thing that I would like to mention that we did notice some changes with two of our children since they have been eating mostly carnivore. One of my daughters, for like the last 2 summers, 2 years really, she's had just like some severe breakout like in this area, and we took her to the dermatologist, and they gave us like some cream to put on her face, which just really made the problem even worse. And I mean, nothing that we did would clear it up. And we've noticed that since she's been doing the carnivore diet most of the time, that has like cleared up, so I'm sure it has something to do with the inflammation. And then another son who just used to have a lot of bowel issues, and we would never know what really triggered it. And quite honestly, I think he had some issues with dairy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Since he's been doing like, mostly carnivore, that issue has been rectified. So we've definitely been seeing
Wow.
some issues. Yeah. So as far as I know, right now it's just Elijah and myself in terms of having autoimmune issues.
So everybody has actually you've seen some pretty dramatic improvements in a large portion, and so yet there's still complaints about. Yeah,
Yeah, but isn't that the human way though,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
It's yeah. So and you know, I do try to be gracious, you know, and just really understanding. But I will say, because of all that's going on in the world now,
yeah,
and we've had we haven't had a chance to go out as much, that's really kind of helped. But it's been
yeah,
really the few times that we've gone out, that was a little bit stressful because it's like, oh, you can't get that, you can't get that, you know, that was, and I'm like, oh, I'm okay if we never eat out again. Like,
yeah.
it was very
Yeah,
stressful. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Wow. All right. So, well, I really appreciate your coming on and sharing your story. And I really think that your testimony is just this is so helpful, and I'm really going to keep sharing this video far and wide. And all of you, I ask all of you who are watching to share it with anybody who needs this information. Thank you for being here today, and with for listening to us have this conversation. And I am just so grateful to have had Anika here and to have you all here. And I'm looking forward to Thursday. So definitely come back on Thursday. We have Stella, who is just coming up on 3 months carnivore, and she's going to be, talking about her experience and all that's been going on. You know her as at Black Focused on Instagram, and she actually posted an amazing transformation story today. So I encourage you to check that out on Instagram. So we're gonna talk though on Thursday, and I'm really excited about it. All right. So, Anika, anything else you'd like to share?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for having me and just for
Mm-hmm.
all that you're doing, and just all the information that you're putting out there and for all those that viewed it. And, you know, my prayer is that whoever watches it, that they'll see that there are other options. Have some critical thinking, whatever the doctor tells you, second guess it, do your research, and, you know, see what happens. But thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. So I'll see you guys on Thursday. All right. Have a great night.
Bye.